Disturb not the harmony of fire, ice, or lightning, lest these titans wreak destruction upon the world in which they clash. Though the water's great guardian shall arise to quell the fighting, alone its song will fail, thus the earth shall turn to ash. O chosen one, into thine hands bring all three, their treasures combined, tame the beast of the sea.
Our story begins in the Shamoti Island of the Orange Island chain. In the Birdkeeper neighborhood, young Ash Ketchum was woken up by the three loud cries of the household dog trio, Roosty. It was an unpleasant variant of an alarm clock, but an effective one nonetheless. He let out a loud yawn and got ready to leave alongside his pet Pidgeotto, Eco. His room was decorated with the statues of the three legendary birds, Moltres, the bird of fire, Zapdos, the bird of lightning, and Articuno, the bird of ice. The young birdkeeper's dream was a common one among the community. Meet all the three sometime in your life. It had been a busy week for Ash, as he, alongside his friend Melody, were in charge of hosting the Legend Festival. Speaking of whom, the young redhead was already waiting at Ash's door, talking to his mother Delia. She appeared to be really frustrated with the organizing duties. Ash, on the other hand, looked like the happiest person on the planet as he dashed out of his house, almost bumping into his mother. He had some papers and asked Melody if she wrote up all the invites. The girl replied by saying she did, but is already regretting staying up for that. Delia tries to console Melody by saying their festival can be quite fun, as they have visitors from lots of places, and they always bring in lots of stories with them. Melody complains that's what makes it even more annoying. There is a big beautiful world outside this island, but all they can do is hear stories about them. She can't wait to have a Pidgeot so she can fly all around the world. Her daydreaming episode is cut short by Ash taunting her, saying the rest of the world is fortunate to not have to deal with her. Melody shots him at death glare before the both set off, distributing the invites for the festival. Somewhere else, near the Whirl Islands, a certain Pokemon was playing with its offspring. The legendary guardian of the sea, Lugia, was trying to teach its offspring how to fly over long distances, but it just couldn't stay airborne for more than a few minutes and always ended up falling back into the water. As it did, it was greeted by lots of Mantines and Mantikes, who helped him fly out once again. Slowpokes on the coast, Pidgeots and Fieros flying high, even the fearsome Gyarados roaming the ocean admired the sight of their guardian and their future guardian. Unbeknownst to them, someone was watching this beautiful sight as well. A green-haired man was sitting in the control panel of what appeared to be a war aircraft. Some of his subordinates entered the area and asked him if he is sure they should go after Lugia right away. The man tells his subordinate, the things you care about and love are your biggest weakness. In case of the Guardian, it's the Pokemon it guards, and that is the only chink in its armor, and this is the best time to strike. He orders his subordinate to officially begin Mission Guardian. As the two Lugias swam around with the Mantikes, they suddenly saw a small orb float towards them. One of the Pokemon went closer to inspect it, and it instantly detonated, sending a powerful shockwave which blasted away the Pokemon. Lugia tried to shield them with his wings, but as it felt more shockwaves around the area, it instructed the Mantines to take the offspring away to safety from the islands. It wanted to stay along and help its parent, but it had no choice. The Mantines swam away with the offspring. More and more assault units and tech were deployed by the aircraft into the ocean. Some of them had fishing nets attached to them, which they used to capture the Pokemon nearby. The Gyarados started fire to hyper beams and hydro pumps, which blasted a lot of the smaller aircrafts away, but out of nowhere they were zapped by a large scale of electric rings fired off by the aircraft. The larger bird Pokemon who tried to combat the assault were met by the same fate. Lugia finally emerged from the ocean and blasted the assault units, which were shattered into oblivion. Just then, it was hit by a stun gun from the larger aircraft. It recovered quickly and charged up an aeroblast at the larger aircraft, but it was hit from behind with a taser gun, this time by the smaller assault units. It used its tail to smash them to bits, only to be hit by the stun gun once again. It looked around and saw numerous Pokemon being captured left and right. It was not able to focus on the battle properly. It flew into a rage and blasted the machines left, right and center, managing to damage the left phalange of the main aircraft, bringing it down. But one of its wings got trapped in the electric rings and caused major damage to the legendary Pokemon. This caused Lugia to fall down on one of the mountains, crashing into it. One of the goons asked the man if they should pursue it, but he received a message telling everyone to back down. The fortress was damaged and they cannot afford to win now. As the younger Lugia was trying to swim away with the Mantines, they felt being sucked into something. It was a large vacuum behind them, which was pulling them one by one. The Mantines did their best to protect Lugia and were able to help it out of the range of the vacuum, at the cost of themselves being captured. The offspring was scared, confused, but knew better not to go back. With whatever strength remaining in its body, it swam towards Shamouti Island. The Legend Festival was officially underway. Everyone was having a good time. Melody was talking to all the foreign merchants and travelers, trying to learn more about the different cultures and what type of cuisine, fashion and Pokemon are there. Ash, on the other hand, was catering to those tourists who were interested in the culture of Shamouti Island and the Birdkeeper colony in particular, who organized the festival here. Pico got to meet its distant cousin, a Pidove from the Unova region, who came here with its trainer. Ash would go about making sure everything was okay. He would look at Melody, who was arguing with her sister Carol. There they go again, he thought to himself. Suddenly he was startled by Tobias, wearing one of the traditional masks of the village. He was the elder of the village. He tells Ash that the festival is very well organized indeed, and the tourists are sure paying up good money for the native commodities. But they must do the Gyarados parade soon, because that is the main attraction after all. Ash asked if there is anything else to demonstrate before the parade begins. Tobias tells him that some travelers from the Kalos region wanted to know more about the Octillery. Ash goes over to the mentioned Pokemon, who was sitting on a thump looking really annoyed at the visitors, just looking at it with curiosity. Ash started to explain Octillery's evolutionary stages and its attacks. But just as he mentioned the attack name, Octazooka, the octopus Pokemon took it as a command and fired the attack straight into Ash's face. He started yelling as the liquid went into his eyes. Pico tried to help by dumping a small bucket of water onto Ash's head, but it was not enough. He immediately ran over to the beach and started cleaning his face with the salt water. As a result, he missed the Gyarados parade, much to his chagrin. As the black liquid dipped down from his face into the ocean, he saw a head emerge from within it. He yelled and fell back. As he looked at a small Pokemon covered in the liquid, called out weakly before falling down. He and Pico moved a bit closer and poured some water onto the fainted creature. And what he noticed freaked him out. It was a young Lugia. Ash could not believe it. He had heard tales about the monster of the sea, and how the chosen one would appear and defeat it with the help of the 3 legendary birds. But no way this was real. The Octillery liquid must have been something else. He sat there for a while, not knowing what to do. The people of the island had all heard the tale. Lugia was the fearsome sea monster who was beaten back by the 3 legendary birds and the chosen one. But this was a baby. It looked scared, helpless and had a fever. How could this be a monster? Ash was raised, being fascinated with the legends and the tales of Shamouti Island, was in crisis. He felt his mind was telling him to hand over this monster to the elders, but his heart told him this Pokemon needed him. It needed him right now. It needed his help. He listened to his heart. He took off his shirt and wrapped the Pokemon up in it, before he and Pico nodded at each other and sneaked past the audience who were busy watching the Gyarados parade. They went back to Ash's house, where he laid the Lugia down. It was breathing really heavy, and its body was heating up a lot. He took a bowl full of water and mixed some of Pico's bird medicine into it and fed it to the Lugia. Its breathing went down, but the fever was still there. Ash went over to Roosty's shelter and grabbed some straw from there. The 3-headed bird decided to follow Ash along, and both it and Pico watched Ash cover the Lugia with the straw to keep it warm. That night, Ash and the birds slept near the Lugia, watching over it. The green-haired man was talking to his crew members again. He asked for a report on the baby Lugia, and they told him by their estimates it must be somewhere along the Shamouti island. They ask if they should go there immediately, but the man tells them to wait for a few weeks. They need the fortress at the full capacity if they want to battle Lugia again. He tells them to remember, their goal is the parent. The offspring, if they manage to get it, will just be a cherry on the top. And if they don't, it's all good. The next morning, Ash was woken up by the pecks of both Rusty and Pico. He opened his eyes groggily and noticed that the Lugia was gone. He freaked out and asked the bird where it was. Did it fly away or something? Rusty assures him it's in the shelter. Then one of its other heads points towards the window. Melody was trying to see through, and by the looks of it, she was not happy. Ash gulped before realizing he left her alone to manage the rest of the event. This was not going to be good, he thought as he opened the door. He saw Melody, Delia, and Tobias standing there, not looking pleased at all. They demanded an explanation as to why he bailed out. He came up with a lie, saying Pico got sick, so he had to get it back and stayed just in case he was needed. He looked over to Pico, who faked a cough and tried to look dull. All three of them lightened their demeanor somewhat and checked on Pico. Delia was confused because Pico looked healthy. She figured it must be a fatigue. Melody was also convinced, but in the back of her mind, she thought something was up. After Melody and Tobias had left, Delia went to take a rest. Ash and the birds went over to the shelter to find the Lugia still asleep. Its fever had come down quite a bit. One of Rusty's head leaned in to check on the sleeping Pokemon, but the other two smacked it. This led to a quarrel which woke the Lugia up. It opened its eyes and looked at the five faces staring at it. Its eyes started to water as it let out a loud screech. Ash tried to cover its mouth, but it bit down on his hand, which caused Ash to scream as well. Delia yelled at him to keep it down. The Lugia tried to fly away, but it was weakened and it fell down. Ash and the birds tried to calm it down by kneeling in front of it and trying to introduce themselves. Ash looked at the Pokemon and said, "We all have names around here. This is Pico, that's Rusty, and I'm Ash. How about we call you Silver? How does that sound?" He tried to give it some bird food. Lugia looked at the food at Ash's hand suspiciously, not sure if it wanted to eat. But Pico tried helping out by eating the food first and showing it was safe. Silver slowly leaned forward and started to eat from Ash's hand. He petted Silver on the head, telling him it's okay, he's safe now. For the next few weeks, Ash became really isolated from the other people on the island. He would spend most of his time looking after Silver alongside Rusty and Pico. The young Lugia started warming up to the three and seemed to be bonding really well with Ash. Although sometimes Delia would be confused as to why a little more of the bird food was getting consumed more than usual, she brushed it off by thinking Pico must be eating a bit more since it was a growing bird. However, Melody was getting more and more suspicious week after week. She would visit Ash, but he would refuse to go out and explore and always acted weird as if he was hiding something. Even after asking him directly, he would say he's just worried about Pico's health, which would cause Pico to act sick again. One day, as the people of Shamouti were going about their day, a large aircraft started to descend on the small airstrip near the beach. Normally, tourist planes and blimps would land here time to time, but this looked like a war machinery. Tobias arrived at the site with some more people of the island council. They were greeted by the green-haired man who walked out. Behind him, his subordinates arrived with a lot of gifts, from fruits to high-quality timber and even rare gems. The man introduced himself as Lawrence III. He said he was a protector and a traveler who went around the known world meeting people of different cultures and helping them out. Melody heard this and became ecstatic. What a life this person was living, she thought to herself. Tobias and the others greeted him warmly and offered him some of their native cuisines. Lawrence and his men were very respectful and open to the hospitality. Some of them even asking about the different attires and fishing practices from the natives, showing a great deal of interest in their culture. Tobias asked Lawrence what brings him to the little Shamouti island. Lawrence, in a charming voice, joked that him and his men got lost in the sea and missed the Legends Festival, but it's better late than never. Everyone laughed at them. It almost looked like Lawrence had the crowd at the palm of his hand, and just then it changed his tone into a bit grimmer one. He told the islanders that there is a massive threat approaching them. Everyone was worried and asked what it was. Lawrence replied by saying, "A Lugia, the monster of the sea, had hatched its egg in Shamauti Island and would come to get it. Both parent and offspring would destroy the place of birth." There were sounds of gasps and panic, but Lawrence reassured everyone by saying, "That's why he is here. He is a protector after all." He asked their permission to set up perimeters and air defenses around the beach so they can fight Lugia when it arrives. The islanders are more than willing to help him out, and Lawrence assures them he will get to work next morning. The villagers were awestruck by him and wondered if he is the chosen one who would protect them. After everyone had left, Melody walked up to him and asked Lawrence if he has traveled all across the known world. Lawrence chuckles and asks her if she wants to travel around the world as well when she grows up. Melody enthusiastically replies by saying she wants to be the greatest explorer in the history. Lawrence tells her she reminds him of his little sister back home and laughs before giving her a small crossbow-like object. He tells her this is a special gun as it can shoot out small and large jolts of electricity and would come in handy if she's ever in danger. Melody was in awe as she admired the piece of work it was. Ash was sitting near the window thinking about what would happen if someone found out about Silver. Just then Delia walked in with some metal sheets and asked Ash to give her a hand in setting these up. Ash asked her why are they doing this, and she looked at him and asked, "Didn't you hear about Lugia?" Ash felt as if someone had gutted him in the moment. He was speechless before Delia continued and told him everything about what Lawrence had said. Ash thought to himself, this is bad, really, really bad. He still said he didn't know and Delia briefed him on it. Ash listened to her and thought to himself, what if this Lawrence guy is right? No, that can't be the case. No baby is born evil. Even if Lugia was evil, there is no proof that Silver will be the same. That night, he hatched a plan to hide Silver. Using the fallen feathers of Pico and some straws, he made a Pidgeotto outfit for Silver. This worked really well as no one really suspected him. Once again, however, Melody suspected him about getting another Pidgeotto out of nowhere. But Silver had him covered. Somehow, it had managed to mimic both Roosty's and Pico's sound. This was able to convince Melody somewhat. She would go on and on about how awesome Lawrence was. She would tell Ash that his aircraft mansion and similar technology would substitute bird Pokemon someday for both travel and messaging. The sooner this island opens up more to visitors and foreign technology, the better. Ash, being a proud native of Shamauti Island and a bird keeper on top of that, would not take kindly to it. Few days would pass as suddenly Ash is woken up by a massive explosion in the middle of the night. He wakes up alongside Delia as they go out of their house to see the massive figure of Lugia near the beach. They heard the air defenses installed by Lawrence's team fire missiles after missiles onto Lugia, causing damage to it. Ash runs to the shed to find Roosty and Pico coming towards him. He would look at them and see Silver flying towards the beach. He would run after him. The battle would rage on as Lawrence in his aircraft would battle Lugia. The natives were trying to help. Lugia fired a powerful aeroblast, damaging the aircraft again, but this time sending Lawrence flying out of it, injured badly. It seems that the battle was coming to an end before Lugia was distracted by the call of Silver. This was enough. A coordinated lightning, ice and fire strike by multiple drones zapped Lugia into unconsciousness. Silver tried to reach out, but Ash holds it back, knowing very well what will happen. Everyone starts to celebrate as Lugia is tied up and loaded onto a warship. They would leave the next day. Lawrence is celebrated as the hero who took a serious injury to protect Shamauti Island. They all called him the chosen one. Silver would cry and try to fly away, but Ash would hold it back. A strange aura started to surround them as Ash starts to see everything that had transpired with Silver and its parent. The myth, the legend, it was all a lie. He tells Silver that they will rescue his parents. Unbeknownst to him, Melody followed him to his house and saw all this transpire. The next day, as Lawrence and his crew When leaving, the residents gathered to bid him farewell. Ash, wearing one of the traditional masks of Shamonti as disguise, alongside Pico, Rusty and Silver, would sneak into the warship. Lawrence was still injured, so he would spend time recovering and would delegate his duties to his second-in-command, Jasmine, who was a rather ferocious young lady with little to no care for Pokemon or human life. She would oversee a rather deadly plan which involved extracting a lot of Lugia's natural psychic and aero energy from its body and injecting something rather malicious in its place. The energy extracted from Lugia was used to fuel a giant cannon attached to the ship. This warship was newly built and was much larger than even the flying fortress of Lawrence. It had 4 large compartments in the center. One of them had Lugia inside. Multiple rocks and boulders were being loaded onto the ship as Ash and the birds looked on. On Lawrence's instruction, the ship headed toward the Fire Island. Ash was cramped up in the grocery room, so he didn't know where they were heading. But when the chefs had left the cabin, he got out of the rice container and walked around the cabin before opening a window. He realized that they were a good distance away from Shamonti now. He called for his 3 friends who got out of their hiding places as well. They wandered around the ship trying to hide to the best of their abilities. In theory, it would be difficult to hide alongside a 3-headed bird, but the warship was so large, it was largely vacant in lots of places. Ash asked Silver if it could sense where its parent was. Silver tried, but it was difficult because of Lugia's natural energy being removed, so the location it sensed was not clear as before. On top of it, Silver could also sense Lugia's energy stored elsewhere. It was confused. Where there were 2 Lugias, it conveyed this information to Ash, who could not understand. He decided that they would check out both the locations. They moved around the ship carefully, sending Pico ahead to scout the area before moving ahead. They reached the first location, which appeared to be a cannon. They were confused but couldn't stay for long, as lots of guards were around this area. They would eventually reach the central compartment where Lugia was located. This was the second location, but it was heavily guarded as well. Just then the ship stopped moving, and a lot of guards started moving out. Ash correctly deduced that despite having a lot of tech and room, this ship was low on workforce. They sat tight until most of the guards had left, leaving only a handful of them. This was their chance. Ash knew they wouldn't win in a head-to-head battle, so he had to improvise. He pulled out a pouch from his pocket which contained one of the traditional homegrown spices of Shamonti. He looks at Pico, who nods. He throws the spice into the air and Pico uses a gust attack at the direction of the guards, causing the spice to go into their eyes and noses. Ash then orders Rusty to charge in with drill peck and knock the guards out. They immediately try to break through the door and reach Lugia, but the substance from which the door was made of was too hard. Ash peeked in through the glass and saw Lugia in what appeared to be an incubator. Just then an alarm went off. Ash saw multiple guards running towards him. Silver wanted to stay and fight, but Ash pulled him away as they tried to escape. They managed to confuse the guards by running around in zigzag pattern, but one of them managed to keep track. Ash and the birds reached one of the exits of the ship and leaped out of it. It was an island. They tried to catch their breath, but the guard landed after them. Rusty and Pico tried to battle, but the guard used a gun which fired off smoke bombs filled with stun spore and paralyzed the 2 bird Pokemon. Silver used a smaller version of Aeroblast in desperation, trying to protect Ash and his friends. This worked as the guard was sent flying into one of the rocks, but the other guards would arrive soon with guns and weaponry. Ash thought to himself, this is how they're going to get captured, but out of nowhere, the guards were zapped by electricity, and behind them, Ash saw an individual wearing the same mask as him. He knew who this was. It was Melody. Ash asked her what was she doing here, and she replied by saying she was saving his butt. She fed lum berries to both Pico and Rusty, healing them before looking at Silver. Silver tried to hide behind Ash. She told Ash she did not know what the hell he was doing here with a baby Lugia, or what he was trying to do by sneaking into Lawrence's ship, but she trusted him and that's why she followed him to help. Ash explained to her what had happened, and although Melody was a bit worried about the baby Lugia, she told Ash about how Lawrence's team was on this island poaching multiple Pokemon. So his story adds up. He was right. Lawrence is not the savior they thought he was. He was a poacher or a mercenary. Ash asked her how did she get here, to which she proudly replied by showing him her boat, a modernized raft made up of light metal and a simple motor system. She told him how she learned to make it from one of the tourists. She was planning to go on an expedition all alone, but this rescue mission will work too. Ash asked where they were exactly, to which she replied by saying the Fire Island, which is home to Moltres. Then Ash put two and two together. They were trying to capture Moltres. That explains the 4 compartments in the ship. He tells Melody this, and just then they hear a massive explosion. Moltres was flying around and firing flamethrowers. The giant cannon was unloaded onto the coast, from which an attack which looked awfully similar to Lugia's aeroblast was fired at Moltres, which stunned the Firebird. Moltres responded with a fire blast at the cannon, but under Jasmine's command, the mercenaries fired giant blasts of water to intercept the attack. This was followed up by catapults, which blasted giant boulders at Moltres, causing it to fall down. Melody commented in horror how the birds are weak to rock-type attacks. Ash was fuming and tried to get back into the ship, but Melody held him back. They saw Moltres being zapped and loaded into the ship, similar to Lugia. Soon, the ship left. The goons who were taken out were tied up by Ash and Melody. These ones were not really mentally tough and were intimidated by the masks. They thought Ash and Melody were cannibals, and one of them outright requested them not to be eaten. Ash and Melody looked at each other and played along to it, and the goons cracked and revealed the next stop, which was the Ice Island, home to Articuno. Ash asked for directions, to which they replied by saying it's in the northeast from here, but begged to be set free. Of course, they did not oblige and left them to their fate alongside the remaining native Pokemon of the Fire Island, who were not happy with them. Ash tells Melody that they will return to Shamouti, after which Ash will leave for Ice Island alone. Melody smacks him in the head, saying that they are going to go do this together. Ash would be in prison alongside Lugia and Moltres if not for her. So he obliges as they race towards Ice Island. Their boat was smaller and quicker, so they would reach much earlier. They planned to scare Articuno away so Lawrence couldn't get his hands on it. Inside the ship, Jasmine gives the briefing to Lawrence, who was in a bed wrapped up in some bandages. She also tells him about some reports saying they were attacked by Shamouti natives who captured some of their men. Lawrence is indifferent to their fates and tells Jasmine to get rid of the clowns if they ever try to interfere in their plans again. Lawrence's men had the Pokemon they captured from Lugia and Moltres' home and were injecting them with the same energy as they did with Lugia. They did the same to Moltres later. More and more of Lugia's natural energy was being replaced with this malicious looking one. Ash and Melody arrived at Ice Island before Lawrence and crew. There was a large cavern, half covered with ice. They entered the cave and it was just a giant labyrinth inside. Ash asked Silver if it can locate where Articuno was, and it tries before starting to lead them towards the location. After a while, they reach the center, where the Majestic Iceberg stood. It looked at Silver and gracefully bowed. Ash and Melody were confused, as they thought Lugia and the birds were mortal enemies. They saw the two Pokemon communicate. Silver tried to convince Articuno to leave, but the Iceberg did not oblige. Instead, it ordered the native Pokemon in the cave to escape. They did so and Articuno prepared to battle alone. The group kept trying to tell Articuno about the danger, but it did not listen, and soon enough a huge blast shattered a huge chunk of the cave. Jasmine and the mercenaries were here. They had the giant cannon with them and a lot of fire-type Pokemon from the Fire Island they had captured before, but they looked to be shrouded in some dark aura. Jasmine looked at Ash and Melody before telling them they don't have anywhere to go now. Articuno engaged them in battle with help from a few native Pokemon who stayed behind, and Ash and crew also helped him out. But ultimately, the Icebirds suffered the same fate as Moltres and Lugia. Ash and his friends were able to hide in one of the smaller caves after Articuno took a hit which was meant for Silver and went down. Not wanting to waste time on Ash and Melody, Jasmine decides to leave them stranded on the island. But before going, she destroys Melody's boat. Ash and Melody tried to look for some wood to build a raft, but there was none. The icy cold winds caused them and the birds to shiver in a corner, not knowing if they will survive. Milady thought about all the times she wanted to leave their home island and regretted ever feeling that way. She started to cry as she hugged Ash. Ash was tearing up too. They were going to die here, stranded on an island far away from their warm and sweet home. Just then they noticed a figure descending from the sky. It was a dragonite, and the person on top of it was someone the kids recognized all too well. Drake, the champion of the Orange Islands, had arrived. And guys, that's where I'll be ending this part. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like this part. Part 2 will be coming out soon. And sorry for staying inconsistent. Like I'm just really busy with some schedule, and I'm trying to bring out longer parts instead of shorter ones. Like I'm planning to bring out less parts but longer in length and with more quality storytelling rather than smaller parts with less effort being put into them. I hope you guys understand, and if you like the content, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.